b-boy. From the old to the new, still a b-boy. Too bold for the school, still a b-boy. East coast to the west, b-boys worldwide. We supposed to be blessed, still a b-boy.
Tonight, I got a true hip-hop head, a student of the game from the beginnings to the golden era and beyond. Along with writer Soren Baker, he appears on the YouTube show, The Great Debaters. Ladies and gentlemen, Amir Rahimi. What's up, man?
How you doing, man?
So do you remember the first time you heard hip-hop?
I was a little kid, but back then I didn't really know what it was. It was just on the radio or someone was playing it. But I didn't grow up in a hip hop household. So it was just really whatever was on the radio is what I heard on the way to school. Or if there was like Persian music, I would also hear that. But hip hop was something that like I got put on by my friends in middle school primarily is when I really started to listen. Aside from that, or prior to that, it was all like I said, whatever was on radio and I thought was catchy, I liked, So hip hop really, when I started to get into it, was more like middle school.
All right. So who were the first few artists that really caught your eye as a kid that really sucked you in?
Tupac was the first one. I got burned 2 CDs when I first started. I was burned Loyal to the Game because that was like the brand new Tupac CD that had come out. So I was burned that. And right before that, I was burned Me Against the World. And that had, been out since 95. But like I said, I was listening to that in middle school. So first was Me Against the World, and then I was burning Loyal to the Game after that.
So this is something I always find interesting is, could you even articulate what it was that drew you to hip hop, to become a true hip hop head? Because obviously it became more than just, oh, I like this kind of music. It became, you're in love with this culture. Can you even really, people give different answers, and I'm always kind of interested in if you can even really, do you even know what really, or it was more of a feeling than a conscious decision?
I think it was just how catchy it was, how I was drawn to the music itself, how I was drawn to the way that the artist approached the music. And I think from up to that point, everything that I'd heard, whether, was rap, on the radio or pop songs or rock and roll music, the singing, R&B, anything like that. This is the genre that had hit me the most on a sonic level, as well as just the way I like how an artist would talk, right? Whether they're rapping fast, slow, or singing or whatever, rap is the thing that attracted me. And that was, just off of those 2 CDs. And then I started to actually, get other music, who I'd listen to later on. And then I was like, okay, well, I think I'm serious with rap. And then it kind of just kept getting more and more and more and more and more. And then I was like, well, I don't think this is going to die anytime soon. So here we are today. I didn't really think about it like that. I just was listening, and that's kind of what happened.
One thing that I always like to give credit for was similar. I don't know Soren's exact age, but, I was born in the 70s. So I grew up with hip hop. These classic albums that we're going to talk about later in the 80s, I was buying as they came out. So I got to live it as it was happening. But the younger generation, you had to go back and discover that. And I would say, 80% of kids, I'm not calling you a kid, but younger generation won't go back and look at, the forefathers who laid this foundation for hip hop to be the global, thing it is now. So I'm always, man, impressed that I'm watching The Great Debaters and you're talking about tapes, I bought in the 80s, and that's way before your time. Did you consciously go back and want to kind of do research on this culture, or you just wanted to absorb as much hip hop as you could? You had gotten caught up, so you just went backwards?
So it depends. I was when I started off, I was very strict with the way I listened to music. I'm not going to say I had OCD because I was never diagnosed with it, but I think I had characteristics of someone who had OCD. And basically, why I'm saying that is because if I listen to like Tupac or let's just say Ice Cube or Nas or whoever you want to throw out there, I would make an effort to listen to their stuff in order. So if like Tupac, I obviously had cheated because I was burned that music. But what I would do is if I had heard of a artist that I wanted to get into, or I had heard something that had caught my ear, then I'd go ahead and get their music from when they first started. So let's say I want to get into Ice Cube, for example. Well, I would start off with the earliest stuff I can find. I mean, back then I didn't have like a vinyl player, you know, I'm talking about middle school. So I wasn't able to get like CIA and Stereo Crew for Ice Cube, but I started off with NWA. And also back then I didn't really know, my search skills weren't as on point as they are now. But I would go and make an effort to start with the most old stuff that I can. And the thing that I think is so good about that method is because you can hear how an artist starts off, who they're inspired by, if their flow switches, if it stays the same, what topics are different, what producers they use, etc., if their voice changes. So I like to see these things, how an artist evolves, falls off, whatever it may be. I like to kind of learn from that aspect. And that kind of carried with all of hip hop, right? So that would be, like I said, Ice Cube, right? Start off with NWA and then go to his solo stuff and West Side Connection, more solo stuff, soundtracks, blah, 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 blah. And then same thing like Nas, right? Obviously, I'd start off with the solo material. So like Illmatic, and it was written, but he also had music before then, most famously with Main Source, as many people know that, and Big L sampled it, and we can go on. But the point is that I always made an effort to try and start with an artist from their beginning and then continue on and go for the whole ride, rather than just like, you know, I only listened to this album and that album and they're 10 years apart, but I missed 3 albums in between that. That's kind of how I started. And that's kind of why I say it was a little OCD, because I was very strict. I did not cheat on that most of the time. I was very strict, and now I'm a little more lenient on it because rap nowadays, there's so many mixtapes and there's so many, I mean, mixtape era, it's not as popular as it was like 10 years ago, right? But still there's so many digital downloads and people are just dropping singles at a random. So it's a little different these days. But particularly in the 80s and 90s, I try and follow that approach.
That's actually really intriguing, because in a way you are experiencing it, you know, in the order that the people who were there for it experienced it. So, you know, that was a cool idea. So I brought up, I talked about the great debaters a little bit. I want to get into that. How did you meet Soren Baker? Because he's interviewed and met the who's who of the hip hop game. I mean, the list is endless. How did you connect with him?
So I used to work at a radio station called Dash Radio, and they're based in Los Angeles, California. That's where I'm from. And he was one of the guests at the station one day. And my friend, old coworker, he was doing the engineering for Soren's show. And then he basically said like, this guy Soren Baker, he's a big hip hop guy, he knows so much, blah, blah, blah. You should meet him. And I was like, okay, sure. So then I walked in on his session. I just sat in, and I think I forget what his topic was, but I think he was talking about Dr. Dre's 2001 album. I think he was talking about the 2001 album, I'm pretty sure. And then he was also talking about some Eminem songs as well, some that weren't as popular. So that I was intrigued by. And then I just started chatting with him, asking him questions. And ever since then, he was coming in weekly. So then I would just start to engineer his show or sit in on those shows. And I would just pick his brain every week when he'd come in, and then we'd just chat afterwards. And I mean, I've since quit that place, but we've chatted and hung out many times. He's a good friend. So, but that's how it started. That was in like 2016.
Yeah, he can literally say he wrote the book on gangster rap because he wrote a book about gangster rap.
That guy's the most knowledgeable
Yep.
person that I know in terms of hip hop that I've met. I met quite a few people. Obviously, I haven't met a ton, right? But I've met quite a few, and he's definitely heads and shoulders over anyone that I personally met. I'll tell you that. He knows, he's listened to a lot. It's not just he's listened to the mainstream, the stuff that people don't know about, the stuff that there's hundreds of copies. He's listened to a lot. So he knows his stuff.
So how did the idea for the Great Debaters, how did that all come together?
We talked about rap so much, and we talked about rap after the shows, in the parking lot of Dash Radio. We've hung out like outside of that, and we were always talking about rap just all the time. And then he basically said, well, what if we recorded these sometimes? So that's pretty much how it happened. We basically, since we always talked about it, figured, well, let's make YouTube content for it as well. And that's just what ended up happening. We started making YouTube videos for it, and that's how the Great Debaters came about. And we always shoot at my place. As you can see, this is the backdrop for the Great Debaters. So we do that, but usually, our conversations were very kind of freestyle-y. They were very just, I would just bring up some random thing, then it would segue to that, then it would segue to that. But Great Debaters is a little more focused. It's just like an album, right? And then we pick our favorite songs from those albums.
So speaking of the backdrop and your collection, obviously you have a big collection. At what point were you just buying music to listen to and you crossed over the line to, what I consider a mega collector, when you have, thousands of copies, whether it's on CD, vinyl behind you or whatever? When did you kind of cross the line to becoming not just a fan, but a collector?
So, that started 7th grade. That was when I bought my first CD. And back then I didn't have a job in 7th grade, but 7th grade. Yeah. It's kind of like, what do you want for your birthday? What do you want for Christmas or whatever? So, I never really wanted anything that was what like the normal kids wanted. Let's just put it that way. So I just wanted like Best Buy gift cards. Back then, Best Buy was selling CDs, and I don't think they are anymore, but they definitely, if they do, they only have one aisle maximum, but I don't think they do. But anyways, that's how I would get a lot of my CDs. There was also back then, Tower Records was still available. That's actually where I got my first CDs. So my whole philosophy was, well, I'm not a thief. Like back then I used to download off LimeWire, like early, before I really liked rap. Before I really liked rap, I used to just download off LimeWire. But then I figured that I should probably buy the music. I figured, well, people in the 80s and the 90s, they weren't pirating music. I mean, sure, there were bootleggers and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, they're still buying it too. You know what I mean? They weren't, the LimeWire wasn't there in the 80s. But the point is, I just felt that I should be putting money in these people's pockets. So I just started to buy music, and my whole philosophy was, I'm not going to listen to it unless I own it. That's still my philosophy for the most part. The thing is, sometimes some people, they don't press things on physical mediums anymore. So that is a little more difficult. So I'll give them a little bit of time. And if the artist has a history of just being digital, then I'll just go ahead and download it, or I'll buy it, because that just depends. And then some people too, they'll release it 5 months later on digital, and it's like, oh, what the hell? So whatever it is, or on physical. So it is what it is. But it just started with little breadcrumbs. I was buying CDs, and then it just ended up getting bigger and bigger. And I started also with vinyl in high school and tapes in high school as well. And it just got bigger. And now it is what it is. It's not like the trend that Instagram started like 10 years ago. And now I'm seeing people who will contact me and say, oh, I inspired them, or other pages similar to mine inspired them. And that's awesome. Mine started like in middle school, and then vinyl and tapes were like high school. And then it just kind of got bigger and bigger.
So what are your one or two prized possessions in your collection? If you had to just pick a couple things that mean the most to you, what would those be? Because we all have them. You know, I'm a mega collector too. We all have a handful that if the house was burning, that's what I would grab first.
God, I don't know. I've got quite a few things that I really like. I want to say my entire death certificate collection. I can't really pick anything from there. I mean, just that whole collection, you know, there's a lot, and just the death certificate, there's probably like 90 things just for death certificate, which is crazy for one album. Right. So that I'm gonna have to give a shout out. There's something that I own, which is really awesome. I've posted it before, but I don't think you'd have to be following me for a while, because I don't remember when I last posted it. But there's a magazine that I have that was a Source magazine from 1995. It was either 95 or 96, but Eazy-E was dead. And Eazy-E had a running subscription with the Source. All right. This magazine was one of his subscription copies. And this is not fake. It has his address. It has everything. And I know it's real because I got it from DJ Speed. So it's not cool. Phony. It's the real deal. And it was given like after he died. So that's just like wild, because he still had the subscription service. Yeah. What's even wilder is there's a copy out there with the photo of his like memorial, you know, the one with him on the cover.
Yeah, I remember that issue. It was like a frame around his head.
Yep.
Yeah.
That exists. That was shipped to him, and someone has that. It's not me, but someone has that. So that's even crazier. But I have one that's also pretty crazy. So that's something that I really like. And then I also have like an Easy business card that DJ Speed also blessed me with. But there's quite a few things. The Death Certificate collection is the biggest to me. Like, if there was one thing that I can grab, it would just be that whole collection. And to pick one thing from that collection, I can't do it. That's my favorite album of all time. Right. So it's a little tough.
That's a good album to have be your favorite album. I mean, that's as classics get.
Yeah.
I was kind of going into the next one it's kind of a two-parter. I was going to ask who your favorite MC was, but I'm guessing that's Cube.
Yeah, he's my favorite rapper of all time. It's interesting because as far as rappers go, although he's my favorite, I don't think he aged as well. I think a lot of his music, particularly post 2000s, his flow had a pretty decent drop off, and his music has suffered a big due to it. But I'm an Honest fan, right? I think his prime is above all other primes, though. And I think his run in the late 80s and early 90s, it was so special. And I don't think it had ever been duplicated. There are so many special artists and albums, obviously. But when it comes to my favorite, he's my favorite. And yeah, man, that Cube, what he was doing in the early 90s in particular was just something out of this world. And I'm happy that even though it didn't last for his whole career, I'm happy we did get to grab that, because that music lasts a lifetime.
Right. That like 5, America's Most Wanted, Kill at Will, Death Certificate, Predator, Lethal Injection. I mean, what a run. That's mind blowing.
Yeah.
And who is your favorite MC that you've got to personally meet? I don't know who you've all met, but, I've been lucky enough to meet some of my idols. Have you gotten to meet anyone that you was one of your, idols?
I did meet Cube once. It was at a quick meet and greet, and I also was backstage somewhere, but I didn't really meet him. We just, you walk right by me. But I did meet him at Amoeba once. So that was awesome. Got a photo and everything. Snoop Dogg, Corrupt. There's been quite a few. Like, I've met Tribe, I met Fife, rest in peace.
Rest in peace, yeah.
I met, because I've been to a bunch of those shows VIP as well, like the Paid Dues and Rock the Bells back when those were happening.
Right.
So I met a lot of those artists. But as far as, like working with artists, not really. No. I hope to eventually, but meeting, I've met quite a few, and Cube would be my favorite. Dre would be awesome. I mean, that would be great. There's so many that are special. Nas would be awesome. Really just so many, right?
Right. It's an endless list.
Like
Yeah.
I can name like 50, 60. Project Pat would be awesome. I'd love to meet him. He's awesome.
Now I'm going to do general hip hop questions. If you could only listen to one MC for the rest of your life, now I'm thinking I know the answer. Who would that be? Their entire catalog.
Oh, entire catalog makes it tough because then it wouldn't be Cube. Oh man, maybe Scarface. Might have to be Scarface, because we're not just talking Scarface. Then we get the Ghetto Boys. We get his work with Face Mob. We get the Product. We get collaborations, which he's had quite a few. So I'd probably go Scarface. I think he is Mr. Consistent. I would say for a while, Ghostface Killah would be Mr. Consistent, but I think his post 2010s work is not that great. I think some of it is. And then I think particularly in like the past 5-ish years, I'm not so crazy about it. So I think Scarface, man, and that Deeply Rooted album that dropped in the 2010s was really good. I mean, that was a great album. And apparently he's unretired, so he's going to make more music.
Oh, he unretired already?
Yeah.
Didn't he just retire again?
Yeah, I mean, you never know. Right? I don't believe rappers retire. I think that's nonsense.
Yeah, Too Short retired in 95 and he's still making albums.
That's true. Jay-Z retired, The Game retired. They all retire, but they don't. So yeah, I'd probably say Scarface.
So you're getting put on a deserted island. You can only bring 5 albums. What are those 5 albums?
5 albums?
Yeah.
Well, Death Certificate. Probably Marshall Mathers LP also. I'd put in The Chronic. I'd put in, this is tough. I don't know, man. This is not an easy question. I want to say, like, I would like to say Illmatic, but it's so short, so I don't want to say. I mean, I need something to last me longer, right? I honestly would probably say something like Mr. Don't Play by Project Pat. That album is fantastic. The production is phenomenal. Project Pat's a character. He's great. But man, All Eyes on Me, like, that's a double disc. I get a lot of bang for my buck there. It's a great album. It's got a couple throwaways, but I love that album, and Pac put me on a lot of memories. So let's just go with those 5 that I listed. Yeah, they aren't necessarily my favorite top 5, but on a deserted island, those are 5 that I can think of off the top of my head.
So now aliens come and invade Earth, and they hear about this art form called hip hop, and they come to you and they ask you to explain what hip hop is by playing one song. What's one song that'll get the vibe of hip hop to someone who has no idea what it is?
Oh man, one song. That's really tough too. Well, it would have to be something with scratching in it. It would have to definitely have scratching in it. I would probably default to something by Run DMC. Is probably what I would go to. Something from Run DMC's catalog is something I go to. Maybe Sucker MCs. I think that's when I think of hip hop, that's a song I think about, is Sucker MCs. That was also one of the songs I had heard earlier on in my life, was that track. Back then I'd picked up like a Run DMC greatest hits from Best Buy, and man, I remember that was on there, and that beat, and I hear that song just like I've heard on a few like hip hop documentaries too. They'll just throw that in there because it's iconic. That's a song that I would for sure probably bring up and then lead them down other roads as well if they liked it. Right.
So now I'm going to do something I call This or That. We can cue Black Sheep. The choice is yours.
You can get with this or you can get with that. You can get with this or you can get with that. You
And I'm gonna give you two options. You pick what the better option is in your opinion. So we're starting with albums.
Mhm.
Spice One, 187 he wrote, or America's Nightmare?
187 he wrote.
Biggie, Ready to Die, Life After Death.
Ready to Die.
Public Enemy, Nation of Millions, Fear of a Black Planet.
Nation of Millions.
Ooh, good thing I got Ice Cube was next, but Death Certificate isn't an option. Ice Cube, Predator or Lethal Injection?
The Predator.
The Lynch Mob, Gorillas in the Mist, or West Side Connection, Bow Down?
Bow Down. That's
Ooh.
a good one. That's a bow down
It's
though.
a tough one, yeah. Gangstar's Hard to Earn, or Pete Rock and CL Smooth, Mecca and the Soul Brother?
Hard to Earn. Let's go.
Easy E, Easy Does It, or NWA Straight Outta Compton?
Man, that's a hard one. And we did a great debaters on this. I'm going Straight Out of Compton, but Easy Does It can get it too. Let's just go NWA on that. That's tough.
Dr. Dre's The Chronic or Snoop Doggy Style?
Chronic.
MC Ren, Kiss My Black Ass, or NWA 100 Miles and Running?
100 Miles and Running.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's tough. But the 100 Miles and Running song
That alone carries it.
Is
You're
the
right.
best of both those EPs.
You're right.
That production is insane.
That's a great track. You're right. Now I got Easy E EPs. The 5150 Home for the Sick, or the It's On 187 Dre Killer one?
It's On.
Jay-Z Blueprint or Nas Illmatic?
Illmatic.
Run DMC Christmas and Hollis, or Easy E Merry Motherfucking Christmas?
Merry motherfucking Christmas, bro. How many songs did they interpolate on just that one song?
Right.
There's like 10 Christmas jingles all in one. That might be the best hip hop Christmas song ever.
I can remember when the 5150 came out, I was in high school, and my parents were divorced. I lived with my dad, but I would go by my mom, like for holidays and weekends. And I said, I got some Christmas music for you. And I put in that track, and that's what I think of her getting all pissed off at me. It was a bad decision, but I was in high school. I was a dumbass. The entire catalogs of DJ Quick or MC8. And you can include Compton's Most Wanted in there too.
Maybe MC8. He has so much. He's got like double if we're talking about just solo catalog, and then you throw Compton's Most Wanted in there. Yeah, probably MC8. But DJ Quick, I mean, as an artist, I mean, he produces, he raps.
Right.
He is an artist, I think, is better, but MC8 is amazing.
Right.
But just their albums, and not talking about like collaborations and other stuff, I'd go MC8.
Producers: DJ Premier, Pete Rock, or Eric Sermon?
DJ Premier.
Now we're doing the West Coast version of that. Dr. Dre, which usually everyone picks, Ant Banks, or DJ Quick? Production.
I want to see how many people choose Ant Banks. He's awesome, but Dr. Dre for sure, and I think he's the best producer in all of hip hop.
Probably. I did have one person pick Ant Banks, but I think it was more sentimental. But Ant Banks doesn't get talked about enough. And another producer that doesn't get talked about enough on the West Coast is EA Ski. More people should know his name because, I mean, man, he's amazing. Now I got Hood movies, the West Coast version. Boys in the Hood or Menace to Society?
Boys in the Hood, and mainly for a lot of nostalgia for me.
Plus, it had a better message.
Yeah.
Now the East Coast version, we got Juice or New Jack City?
Juice.
Now the round is, I'm just going to give you an artist name and tell me what you think of when you hear their name. Not necessarily a word, just, when I say this person's name, what comes into your head? Fushnikins.
Tongue twisting, hard to understand, crazy flow.
Actually, last week I interviewed Chip Fu from Fushnikins, and he was the crazy, rapping one.
The toughest one. That's the guy who I know like half of what he says at best.
Right. When you sing along, it's just kind of like that. Right?
Yep.
The DOC.
Big What If. That first album was phenomenal. He was obviously working behind the scenes for a lot of classic material and great material, and still does work. But big what if. That might be the biggest what if in hip hop, next to Big L, in my opinion.
I've actually said for years that if he wasn't in that car crash, he might have been looked upon as one of the greatest MCs of all time.
Yeah,
I mean, amazing.
I agree.
MF Doom.
Oh man. Well, first and foremost, rest in peace.
Right.
And for him, man, just creative. Just creative from aliases to early on. I mean, he started off with KMD,
Yep.
and he works on his side projects. He has the solo stuff. He just has so many monikers, so many personalities. Just unique, ahead of his time.
Right. King T.
I think King T, when I think of him, I think he has a great family tree. I think that first off, we have King T. He's one of the unsung heroes of Compton.
Mhm.
He brought on Alcoholics. He brought on Exhibit. Those artists had good catalogs of their own, and then also worked with other great artists and made their own collaborations.
Right.
King T's kind of like the father. I don't want to say their father, obviously, but
Mhm.
he was just huge in the development of a lot of people's careers. And then I also want to give a shout out to Glenn Friedman with the great album covers. And then King T has actually some of the best album covers ever.
I agree. Those first 4 albums. King T doesn't get mentioned enough or remembered enough. Mr. Mike from South Circle.
Wow, Mr. Mike. Mr. Mike was dope. I heard him first because he was on a compilation. It may have been an NWA compilation because Ice Cube was featured on the song, the Wicked Ways song.
Yeah, that's from his album, Mr. Mike's album, Wicked Ways. Yep.
Wicked Ways. And that was my intro to him. And then Suave, when I got really into Suave, Mr. Mike is awesome. He's someone that a lot of people don't talk about, unfortunately. Right. But just if you dive into Suave's catalog, you'll get like 8 Ball and MJG, you'll get Tila, you'll get all those people. Right. Mr. Mike, don't sleep on him.
I agree. That Wicked Ways, that whole album was dope. And that South Circle album was great.
South Circle, shout out to South Circle.
Yeah, that was a good album. We hit on him a little bit before. Ant Banks.
Great producer. Great producer. He also has his own solo catalog. I think when it comes to making beats, obviously a lot of his stuff with Too Short is mentioned, and Too Short, whenever you saw Ant Banks and Too Short, it was always something special, in my opinion, as well as his other work. He's definitely one of the producers that, as we already mentioned earlier in the show, should get more shout outs.
Totally agree. And even, you talked about King T's family tree. You look at, Too Short, from Ant Banks to Spice One to Forte to, you can keep going. Mm-hmm. That whole Dangerous Crew really branched out.
Crew.
Right. Royce the 5'9".
Aged well. I think Royce the 5'9" aged well. He started in the late 90s, if I recall. He was on Slim Shady LP. He had other work, and he had his earlier stuff like, Death is Certain. He had Rock City, and then he had a bunch of mixtapes too. I think his album was it 2018. The Book of Ryan is my favorite Royce album. I think it's pretty much a masterpiece.
That's a great record.
It's so good, and that's my favorite album of that year. And I think Power might be my favorite song from that year. That was just from that album. It was either Power, if Fight Song by Master Ace and Pharoah Monch came out that year, then that might be my favorite song from the year. But those two are in the top 5 of the year for sure. So Royce 5'9", I think he aged gracefully. I think he also got more relevant as well with he had Slaughterhouse for a while, and he has stuff with Eminem again and Bad Meets Evil. And I think he's sharpened the pen a lot over the years, and big shout out to him because he's awesome.
Yeah, he's amazing MC. So every show I have a theme behind me. As you can see, it's Ice-T's Power. So I got to say Ice-T. What do you think of?
You know what? I don't want to say underrated because I think he's sold well, but I also want to say underrated because he doesn't really get brought up. Um, like, you get Ryan Pays and you get Power and you get the Iceberg and you get OG and you get Home Invasion and so on and so forth. He's really, really, really good. And he's awesome and he's a great actor. So he's multifaceted when it comes to hip hop, when it comes to acting. And then on top of that, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but he's old. And what I mean by that is he is older than people would probably guess, but he can rap his ass off. If you heard the song Slayers Club by R.A. the Rugged Man.
Yeah, with Chino on it, that's a dope track, yeah.
Ice-T had the best verse on that whole song.
Yeah.
And was 60 something when that came out.
I think he's 63 now, yeah.
Yeah, and then he had Feds in My Rear View, which dropped. That was dope. So Ice-T, I mean, he can still rap and he's over 60 years old. That's crazy. And this is another reason why rappers don't retire.
Right. I mean, it's not like an athlete where you can still do it.
He's awesome, man. Ice-T, and he also had the hottest girl in the game with Darlene at one point.
Absolutely.
He had the cars, he had the jewelry, he had the style. He's a trendsetter that doesn't get enough credit, in my opinion.
I completely agree. A lot of younger people now, don't realize how big he was musically. When his stuff was coming out, I mean, he was a big deal in the hip hop world. Plus, he was mad cool. I got to chill with him for about half an hour once, and he was so mad cool. So he even gets that, stamp of approval. PMD, Parrish Smith.
Just Parrish?
Just Parrish, no Eric.
Parrish is dope. I want to say I really like his music with his counterpart.
Of course, everyone does.
EPMD is one of the best groups in my opinion. Parrish, I prefer as a rapper over Eric. He's still making music. I haven't heard all of his music to date, so I can't comment on all the newer stuff. But Parrish is awesome, and clearly he and Eric are still very influential. As we heard, Nas just dropped the song EPMD 2. That also featured Eminem, which was interesting, but Parrish is still making dollars, pun intended.
Absolutely, yeah. Big L.
So that's another huge what if. I don't like the comparisons. Usually a lot of people will compare Notorious B.I.G. to Tupac, which I think the only reason why they do that is because of the beef. But I think it's dumb. I don't think that's a real fair playing field. Instead, they should be comparing Biggie to Big Pun and Big L, and not because they have Big in their name, but because they had the album while they were alive, and then they had the posthumous releases too. And I think that Big L is really my favorite of those three that I just mentioned. And I wish we can see more of him. Rest in peace to all of the artists that I mentioned. But Big L is someone who was really my style of rap music, with the punchlines, with the aggressive demeanor, with just his style of rapping. I just really enjoyed it. Plus the DITC crew was fun. So shout out to all of them. So that's what I think of Big L.
That first, Lifestyles, that Poor and Dangerous album, I mean, that's still almost ahead of its time, and it's been 25 years. I mean, mad talented.
Amazing.
I just talked about him before. EA Ski.
So that's another underrated producer and rapper. And also he was big with Master P. So
he was signed to No Limit before No Limit got huge.
Yeah. So EA Ski is big. I wish we got more music from him. That's one thing I wish. I know there's a lot of stuff in the vaults. I want to hear some of that music. So EA Ski drop some of it, man. We want to hear it.
Right. Yeah, he recorded a whole album that was promoted heavy. I think it was called Earthquake.
Yep.
Right, late 90s. Yeah. I have some of the tracks that should have been on there. It would have been a dope album. Cam from Watts.
Thank you. That's the first thing that comes to mind for Cam. He's the one who told Ice Cube to shave his head. Ice Cube recorded Death Certificate, the greatest album ever made. Cam had a big hand in that. Thank you, Cam. He also has a dope solo discography of his own. His 1993 album I like a lot, Never Again. He's awesome. We got Peace Treaty. We got the Watts Riot. I mean, Cam is dope. Yep. And then he also had some diss records too.
Whoop,
so
whoop.
he's yeah. Shout out to DJ Pooh. Yeah, no, he's
that was a dope compilation, and DJ Pooh compilation has some good tracks. It also had Mr. Grimm's Ebonics. Ain't as good as Big L's Ebonics, but it's still a good record.
Well, Ebonics took 2 years to make by Big L. It's gonna be hard to beat that one.
You brought him up before, Eminem.
Controversial. That's a word that comes to mind. He started off his career with controversy. He's continued it with controversy. He is one of the best rappers, in my opinion. His discography can get a little wild at times, a lot of questionable decisions when it comes to production or how to execute on production, some of his flows, some of his accents, his choruses. Right. A lot of it can be wishy-washy, but when it comes to the core rapping ability, Eminem can't be touched by 99.9% of these guys. I don't care if he's white. I don't care if you don't like his album. If you want to go up with him face to face, a cappella, it's going to be hard to take that guy down. He is a force, and he's great.
Yeah, when he wants to be, he's amazing. That's even an understatement. How about Dub C from the Mad Circle?
Oh man, Dub C dropped one of the best albums of all time, and no one
Curb Serving?
No, ain't a damn thing
changed. All right.
Curb Serving's really good. Ain't a Damn Thing Change is phenomenal. Then we got the low profile stuff. Right. We got West Side Connection stuff. We have his solo stuff. We have the triple braids that he always says people are going to copy, but I don't see anyone with triple braids. And he's got the great flow. He made Crip Walkin' cool next to other artists. He's not the only one, but he's one of them. And he's definitely super awesome, and his flow is exceptional.
And the average fan doesn't know that Coolio was in the Mad Circle before he went solo. You know, and Ain't a Damn Thing Changed, Coolio was on almost all them records.
Coolio did great. And Coolio's album, It Takes a Thief, was great too.
That is a great album. That is a great album, front to back. Really good. Tretch from Naughty by Nature.
It's interesting. It's one of those things where I think underrated is an appropriate term, but the interesting thing is Naughty by Nature sold a lot of music. Like they also won a Grammy from Poverty's Paradise, which of the first 3 albums, not counting the New Style, if we're not counting that, that's their 3rd album for not counting the New Style. That went that had Feel Me Flow in it. That won the Grammy. Then we had like Hip Hop Hooray on their 1993. That was huge. We had OPP. That was huge. We had a bunch of big songs, and they also were on the Juice soundtrack with Uptown Anthem. That was a single. So I mean, they're big. They have a lot of big hits, big anthems. Tretch doesn't get brought up, and his flow is so great. He had a fast flow. And he was very witty with his bars, and he's also New Jersey. So shout out to New Jersey.
And Naughty puts on a great live show. You know, I've seen them multiple times when they were hot and even later. They really go all out with their live shows. What you know about Rah Digga?
Oh, wow. Rah Digga's dope. So I haven't heard all of her stuff. I've heard her stuff with Busta Rhymes. I've heard her Dirty Harriet. But
that's her at her best.
I'm sorry.
That's her at her best. So if you heard that, you heard her at her best.
So she's dope. I need to hear a little bit more, but I do like Rah Digga.
Far Side.
I wish they made more music. I think Bizarre Eyed for 1992 Los Angeles, it's so different from what everything else was going on at the time. Their beats were so good. Their rapping style was great. They were weird, but in a good way.
Right.
Kind
of like Dell. Yeah.
Yeah. Dell is another one of those guys that, I mean, but 92, Dell didn't release an album, but 91, he had I Wish My Brother George Was Here, which was exec produced by Ice Cube. So it sounded a lot like Ice Cube's music, and they worked together and they're cousins. So that explains that. But then 93 is when No Need for Alarm came out. So that was definitely sonically different from I Wish My Brother George Was Here. But Far Side, I think that first album is so great. Lab Cab in California is also awesome. And I wish we got more music from them.
The Licks, Alcoholics.
So also they're one of those interesting like concept groups. I don't want to put them in that kind of box, but what I mean by concept group is their name is it's a name where you can't be like 40 years old and all of a sudden not rap about alcohol. Your name is the Alcoholics. That's your brand. Yeah. So it's cool how they've always kept that. They have the Liquid Crew, the Alcoholics, they have the 21 and over like name. Then they have other song names that they just continue to use the alcohol stuff. And I think that's clever and it's held up. I like their logo. I mean, everyone's been on that floor throwing up in the toilet at one point. Yeah. So Alcoholics are dope.
What do you know about the Conscious Daughters?
Wow. Okay, so Conscious Daughters are also a cool group. Big shout out to Paris.
Definitely
Paris,
underrated.
So Paris is underrated, and I have to shout him out if we're talking about Conscious Daughters.
Yep.
Ear to the Street. They're dope, and I haven't heard all of their stuff, so I can't comment on all of it. But from what I've heard, I enjoy their music as well as Paris's contributions to it.
Right. Yeah. The first two Conscious Daughters albums, Ear to the Street and Gamers. Yeah. They're both
that
great.
One I haven't heard. Heard that one.
They're both great. Brother Lynch Hung.
Oh man. That guy is
unique.
Gross. He's gross. Brother Lynch is awesome, dude. He's gross though. He's got some gross music, but no, I mean he 24 Deep, Season of the Sickness. He's got
Rest in Piss.
Stuff. Rest in Piss is phenomenal. Yep. I'd actually just started making some TikToks in the past few weeks, and you'd be surprised. My biggest video on TikTok is Rest in Piss, Brother Lynch Hung. I was showing my tape, and all these fools were in the comment section. It's got like 400,000 views right now. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. And this is Brother Lynch Hung. I posted Scarface. I posted Nas. I posted like big names. And Brother Lynch had the most views. It's crazy. But Rest in Piss, I mean, his flow on that song alone is crazy. And then he had music with Strange Music.
Right.
But Brother Lynch, I think when it comes to him, I think his flow is something else. And he has very graphic content. So if you have a stomach for it, then go ahead and listen because it's catchy and good.
Right. Smith & Wesson, or you can call them the Coco Bravos.
Smith & Wesson's dope. I like Duck Down. I like Boot Camp Click. You could have went with them. You could have went Black Moon. You could have went with OGC. You could have went with whoever. Helter Skelter. Yeah. I like them a lot. And actually, I probably like The Shinin' more than any of the other debuts by any of those groups.
Definitely.
I think I'd go that far of personal preference.
That's a great one time. Yeah, that's a dope album.
It's really good. Really good.
And lastly, Big Mike, who filled in for Willie D when Willie D left the Ghetto Boys.
So Big Mike, he dropped one of the funniest albums I've heard in my whole life, and that would be the Convicts album with Mr. 3-2, Rest in Peace.
Yep.
If that album came out today, I think a lot of people would try and ban rap music.
Right.
I'll tell you
Cancel culture, get in.
That they'd be in prison for that now. Well, ironically enough, the Convict
covers it. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's a dope rapper, and you said he filled in for Willie D and the Ghetto Boys when that happened on Till Death Do Us Part. He also has his Something Serious. He has Still
It's a good album.
It's hard to hit, he's got all these. So Having Things is so great from Something Serious. That's just a great album. And
the whole album is dope, yeah, no doubt.
He's just awesome. So shout out, and he's also from New Orleans.
Yep.
Not from Texas.
Nope. So you got any pluggables to plug? Where can people get at you? I know you got the rapping and snacking tag. I mean, hip hop and food, what else does a man need, right?
It's true. Yeah. I mean, that's all I need, at least.
Right.
Rapping and snacking is the Instagram, it's the TikTok, it's the YouTube. I post YouTube videos weekly. I post some, I'd say 2 to 3 videos a week is kind of like my flow right now. Instagram, I'll post every day, whether it's through story or post, you'll see me on there. And TikTok, I've been posting every day for a month now. So those I show my collection, I give opinion pieces, I just talk about rap. And then there's food mixed in there too, because I love food.
I love when someone who wasn't alive for some of these events goes back and revisits them. So nothing but respect. Keep repping hip hop. Everyone check out The Great Debaters. It's a great show if you're a hip hop head. And, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Yeah, nice to meet you. And I appreciate you reach out. And thanks for mentioning some artists that not a lot of people talk about, like Big Mike, Conscious Daughters, and the list goes on, Mr. Mike, etc.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Salute. Thank you.
Right.
Likewise.
Have a good one. Peace.
See ya.
Yo, Surreal the MC, rearrange, yo. Still a B-boy like a grade short of an A. Metaphor 3, 2, 1, quarter to day. More to display, keep the hoarders away. Grabbing mics like cranberries with an ocean of spray. Old school like KFC, just get in the van. Streaking Snoops, Ren's hat, don't mention it, man. Head spin, back break, neck speed, pop lock, jaws drop, fresh vest, bomb squad, Hank shot. S, you make no sense. What you trying to say? Pay to play, we outside just dying to play. I said play twice, go 3 times with a rhyme. Off topic again, it's the sign of the times, finally mine.
Surreal?
Me, myself, De La Soul, Bud Ice with snowballs, yo, I'm way too cold. Still a B-boy for life, till death do us part. Come back, spray paint, real fresh from the start. Still a B-boy, from the old to the new. Still a B-boy, too bold for the school. Still a B-boy, East Coast to the West. B-boys worldwide, we supposed to be blessed. Still a B-boy, from the old to the new. Still a B-boy, too bold for the school. Still a B-boy, East Coast to the West. B-boys worldwide, we supposed to be blessed.
Hey yo, AK, kick that old school flow.
Okay man, I'll take it back to 84. Remember when they said hip-hop was a fad that would last just a year or two? Well, 40 years later, we're bigger and greater. I guess that we showed you. Still miss that 80s hip-hop, the music that made me a dreamer. It had real beats, it was from the real streets, and was harder than a femur. It was a new culture for the youth, inventing as we went. We did it for the love, not to buy some bud or pay our mama's rent. Then Run DMC came along, changed the game, a whole new level. No longer underground, now earthbound, stirring things up like a dust devil.
Still a B-boy, from the old to the new. Still a B-boy, too bold for the school. Still a B-boy, East Coast to the West. B-boys worldwide, we supposed to be blessed. Still a B-boy, from the old to the new. Still a B-boy, too bold for the school. Still a B-boy, East Coast to the West. B-boys worldwide, we supposed to be blessed.
Hey yo, I got an itchy tongue, call it a trigger finger, cause it spits raps. Instead of peeling caps, I blow your dome back, so throw that whack rhyme away. Sit down and check this style out. Take notes but don't bite and try to eliminate my clout. I'm out for blood, hunting like a predatorial species. You couldn't beat me if you was up early and had your wheat teas. You can't see me, you blind like Stevie, to the fact that I'm still a B-boy spitting sharp over this fire track. These new rappers whack, they need to hang it up, put it away. They freshman style wet, and I'm hanging out to dry so they gets no play. Whether it's for a radio, they need to play it low key, cause MCing for them is not the way to go. It's not what you say, but how you deliver it. So if you poetically inclined but can't articulate, it's useless. See, I do this with ease, it's like a natural born talent for me to speak on beats and get this thing straight crack.
Still a B-boy, from the old to the new. Still a B-boy, too bold for the school. Still a B-boy, East Coast to the West. B-boys worldwide, we supposed to be blessed. Still a B-boy, from the old to the new. Still a B-boy, too bold for the school. Still a B-boy, East Coast to the West. B-boys worldwide, we supposed to be blessed.